We're now joined by the defence and security analyst Tobias Ellwood. Tobias, thanks for talking to us. First of all, Macron saying 26 allies are pledging troops by land, by sea and by air. So how strong do you think this commitment really is from a European perspective?
Well, good evening. In your summary there, you actually gave a good indication that there is a division between what America is thinking and what Europe is thinking. The best scenario has always been when Europe and America are on the same page, supporting Ukraine and Ukraine's objectives and standing up to Russia. But what we've seen since Donald Trump came to the White House is his insistence to somehow stay close to Russia, to bring Putin in from the cold, to agree a deal with Moscow. And it's forced European countries, for the moment, up to this point, to agree to Donald Trump's direction of travel, support that Alaska summit, and bring Russia to the table. The consequences we've seen since then is the devastating missile attacks on Ukraine, on Kyiv, the capital as well. And something which I think is a bit of an eye-opener is those images from China this week of Putin and Xi rubbing shoulders together, and a bigger concern as to where our global order is going. And this is why there is that coalition of the willing meeting in Paris, because we recognize the picture. Putin's long-term intentions are not peace, and we really would like America to get this.
Tobias, let's talk about the UK, which of course has been one of Ukraine's staunchest backers up until now. What role do you see Britain playing if this reassurance force ever materialises?
I think that's a really good question. And the knee-jerk answer is, oh, boots on the ground. It is more complicated than that. Britain has a history going back over the last couple of centuries of stepping forward when European security is in peril, going back to Napoleonic times. And we did it again in the last 2 wars. We're not the same power as we were before, no doubt about it. But the fact that we are willing to step forward and encouraging others to do so, I think is very symbolic about our concerns of wider European security, our commitment to Ukraine, but also to stand up to Russia as well. I would stress that this boots on the ground is shorthand. Journalists like it. It is more complicated than that. It would probably start off with a no-fly zone, because that's the easiest way. You need to control the skies above before you even think about putting troops on the ground. But it raises that bigger question about long-term security. If you can't provide Ukraine with any form of long-term security, then the clear European position is all that we'll see is Russia step back, rearm, regroup, and probably do this again in a couple of years' time. And that's, again, another message that we want Washington to understand.
Risks involved as well, and let's talk for a second about Putin and his warnings that any foreign troops would be legitimate targets. Tobias, is that going to deter European allies, or maybe that even stiffens their resolve, you think?
No, you're absolutely right to ask that question, because go back to the very start of this war back in 2022, and there was this constant messaging from Moscow. Every time we considered sliding across another weapon system to Ukraine to help them, we got this rhetoric from Putin, and the West was spooked, if we're honest. We had public debates, if you recall, about whether a weapon system was offensive or defensive, and discussions about main battle tanks, F-16, long-range missiles. That should never have been in the public domain. We should have been far more committed. We've lost that Cold War statecraft, if you like, to look our adversary in the eye, conscious of the escalatory ladder. You don't want things to get out of control, but knowing how far you can push your adversary before things tip over. And we've lost that art completely. And here we are again with Putin pushing back, saying, you dare do this, you dare put foreign troops on the ground or have any form of foreign capability to boost Ukrainians' defense posture, and we will respond. Well, let's be stronger than that. Let's be tougher than that. Let's not blink.
Let's talk about Ukraine and the promise that they've been given of EU membership 5 years from now, by 2030. What do you think Moscow would make of that, and how realistic actually is that timeline?
You know, this is really interesting. You visit Ukraine and you actually realize that, sadly, it hasn't advanced. It hasn't moved as fast as some of those other countries that came out the traps the same time. When the Soviet Union fell, you know, you go to Poland and look at how they've advanced. You look at the Baltic nations, they're all doing incredibly well. partly because, yes, they've also joined the EU. But ultimately, Ukraine has stayed behind. The oligarchs, the corruption, it's not advanced. And one of the things that scares Russia is to have a state as big, as large, and economically eventually as powerful as Ukraine being an exemplar as to how things should be done. And that's the last thing Putin wants. He's got Belarus up there, which is a complete basket case. And so he wants a buffer zone so Russian people don't look over their shoulders and say, hang on a minute, we want our economy to work a bit like that. And that's, I think, at the heart of what driving Putin to make sure that that's why he wants to, be encouraged to invade Ukraine in the first place. So this desire to join the EU, to upgrade the economic capability there, and to introduce a less corrupt society is all, I think, good news for Ukraine. The Ukrainian people will actually want it, and it's well overdue.
And of course, Putin has been quite vocal in the past about Ukraine's potential NATO membership and also European Union membership as well. But could NATO get involved if things escalate here, do you think?
Well, again, that's another good question. I mean, the EU side, the economic side is one thing. The security angle is another. And the hesitance from Donald Trump to say we're not going to provide that security is a real blow to the Europeans. We need America and Britain, as I stressed, on the same page here, looking after European security. That is what NATO was all about. In my view, NATO did blink at the very start of this. We had a choice to, as the troops were building up before the invasion took place, to slide a couple of NATO divisions, and probably a coalition of the willing, because not everybody would have agreed, into Ukraine, and then absolutely look Putin in the eye and say, you dare to invade a sovereign state, and you're going to get the might of the most potent military alliance looking at you in response. And we didn't. We decided to say, well, look, Ukraine's not a NATO member. We're not going to bother with this. Well, Afghanistan wasn't a NATO member. Neither was Bosnia, I don't think, or Iraq. All these places that I've been involved with. And yet there we are giving up simply because it was a cop-out, in my view. And the deterrence of stopping a superpower, or certainly a regional power like Russia, pushing in from the east failed. And therefore, NATO should really galvanize itself and recognize that because it didn't do the right thing at the right time, Europe's security is all the much weaker right now.
Tobias, we couldn't have you on without discussing this, but the UK's now former Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, has made the decision to resign. So how's the mood within Starmer's party on the back of this announcement?
Well, you're asking me that question when it's still unfolding. I've just learned that Britain now has a new Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, who's, I think, very competent and capable and will do well on the international stage. But it's one of those things. It's some detail to do with her own personal housing situation that then escalated, wouldn't go out of the front pages of the media here, and became the story itself that she couldn't actually do her work. That's prompted a much wider cabinet reshuffle that we're, as I say, just learning about as well. But at the same time, Reform, which is this up-and-coming party, are having their conference today as well. So it's multi-party politics in the UK. Everybody's adjusting.
Indeed, perfect timing from Reform. Tobias Ellwood in London, thank you so much